Alright, now that we have the vCSA deployed and we've deployed the vCenter server, or I'm sorry, the NSX manager and done the vCenter integration, one thing that I want to let everybody know of right away is that because of the fact that we integrated DC1 and DC2 together when we deployed the second vCenter, because we joined the same single sign-on domain, we did not have to go out and add a license to Data Center 2 in order to deploy NSX Manager or do any of the host preparation. Now, I ran into some problems in the setup of the lab, and to limit the amount of additional steps that I would have to go through, I was able to get the compute node operational, but I was not able to get the management node operational. I kept on running into problems where the NSX bits were not being installed and scanned and things like that. The host would get scanned, but then the installation process would never kick off. And I spent a couple of hours trying to troubleshoot the problem. There was a couple of knowledge-based articles that I read through that pointed me in a certain direction, and they were relatively straightforward instructions: do this, do that, make sure this is turned on, restart the process, that type of stuff. But that wasn't working, and I could not, regardless of what I tried to do, and I wasn't about to sit there and try to manually install the NSX bits. So I rather made a adjustment to my lab, and instead of having one node in the compute cluster like I have right here, and then another node in the management cluster similar to what I have in DC1, I said, you know what, let me just roll with this on a single host. So I went back and I gave host 5, instead of giving it 8 gigs of RAM, I gave it a total of 12 gigs of RAM. And same amount of CPU. That didn't change. Then what I went and did is I went and I on its data store here, I have one data store. On the data store, I went ahead and I uploaded the Ubuntu 16.04 operating system. I uploaded that, and then I deployed a VM, DC2 LVM1. Okay, so it's a basic deployment. That's where all the steps we've been through in the past, we've already covered all these things. So I'm not going to go back through them again and bore you to tears on that. What I did in order to get this a step forward, let me jump over here to my deployment. Let me come over here to service installation and upgrade. And on logical network settings on this host, I went ahead and gave it this segment IDs of 6000 through 6099. So basically 100 logical switches is what we could have. I did that, and then on transport zones, I created a single transport zone, DC2 transport zone. And because of the fact that I only have one cluster, it's going to be kind of a no-brainer as to how it connects. We're going to basically join the compute cluster, which is going to be DC2 host 5, that connects us all together. Then what I went ahead and did is I created a logical switch, and I named it DC2 logical switch 1, something very, very easy to do. And then I added that LVM1 virtual machine that I just created, and I added it here as the VM. Once that was done, I went ahead and I had a couple of options. Do I create a DLR? Do I then associate a transit logical switch and go through all of those additional steps? And I thought to myself, no, because we've already taken a look at that on Data Center 1 with the first NSX manager. We've already been through all of those steps already. So I decided to take a slightly different deployment option, and I said, let me just go ahead and deploy an Edge Services Gateway. So I have an ESG deployed, and I have mapped the logical switch directly to it. If we were to come over here and click on Edge 1 and then go to Configure on the interfaces, you can see that I have connected logical switch 1 to it as a dedicated NIC, and then I also associated the uplink, and I gave the uplink, I created a new distributed port group right here called NSX uplink, but on this one here, I am specific on the VLAN. If we come over here to edit settings and go to VLAN, I'm specific to VLAN 101. So it's a different subnet. So basically the way that you could look at this is this. Go ahead and draw this out real quick for you. And switch this over to black so it's easier to see. What I basically did is this. If you were to draw this out in its total capacity, from left to right, this will be DC1 just so that it's easy for everybody to follow. I have my host 1, host 2, and I have host 3. And I have a logical, so I have VM1, VM2, and VM3. Let's just say that that's what's there. And then all of these guys are connected to the same logical switch. And then there's a DLR that they connect to. So this would be my DLR. The DLR then connects over to host 4 across the transit logical switch to the Edge Services Gateway. We're just going to put that in here. This is my transit logical switch. And then from here, I have an uplink going up to, which is a distributed port group. And this goes up to my CSR. Let me just go ahead and draw this up. This is my CSR 1000V, right? And this is VLAN 100 on the 10.100, or sorry, 10.10.0.0/24 prefix. We're running OSPF and BGP, you know, all that good stuff along here. So what I did is I came over here. This will be DC2 on this side. And what I did is I created I have one host. I have host 5. And then what I did is I created a logical, and I have VM1. I went ahead and I have a logical switch connected to the Edge Services Gateway. And this Edge Services Gateway has a connection up to the CSR 1000V. This is a distributed port group, but this is VLAN 101 with the IP address of 10.10.1.0/24. OSPF is enabled on this link. OSPF is enabled on this link. Obviously, we have BGP running between here and here. This is BGP, and we're all good to go there. And what I did is I associated this virtual machines NIC to that logical switch. This is going to be my logical switch here. And then I also turned on DHCP here. And I have internet access from this VM going outbound. Now, the next step for me to go and play around with would be, you guessed it, would be doing things like site-to-site VPN and other things. And that's where we're going to go from here. So that is how everything is operating currently. Now, I haven't tested location-to-location communication, but I'm going to be. So one of the first things we're going to take a look at is going to be testing the site-to-site VPN. I'm also going to do the L2 VPN and test it out and stuff like that. I do want to try out the universal distributed DLR, the universal logical switch, to do cross vCenter, or in this case here, this would be cross vCenter communication. We're trying to like connect from. Let me go ahead and switch to another screen real quick. Come over here and going from, say, moving this VM here over to here on this host, but you would need to make sure that the storage for these guys is squared away and ready to go. And I don't currently have that in play. It's not that big of a deal. I could make things happen on the back end where I don't have them currently set up. Not that big of a deal. No harm, no foul. But that's currently where I'm at operationally. So let me go back over here. Now that you understand the logic that, or the workflow that I've got built. So that's one thing that I'll say is like super important when you're diving into how all this stuff works, is if you're struggling at all with understanding the logical flow of how this stuff works, that's going to be one of the first things that you're going to want to make sure that you understand. If you're not correlating all the communication and all that type of stuff, this was tricky at first when I first started to learn it. But once I spent a little bit of time on it and read up on the documentation, started reading blogs, was going through video courses, it all started to make sense as I progressed forward. But that's the whole thing. As I progressed, it was a new term or a new capability. But the one thing that I've always had in my back pocket is I'm a network engineer. Like, networking has always been and always will be my like core foundation. And then if I add anything to it, it's going to be adding capabilities like, VMware NSX, or understanding a different vendor's way of doing a particular thing. But networking at its core, I'm pretty good with. So because of that, this stuff right here that we're seeing in front of us makes sense to me. So this is where we're currently at. So a couple of little tests to do. If I was to go ahead and let me go over here to my hosting clusters. I'm going to keep the topology on screen the way that it is, but I'm going to go to this ESG, the new one, I'm going to go launch the web console. Let me go ahead and clear the screen off real quick. Actually, you know what? Let me stop that. Let me go over here to here. Let me go ahead and create a new entry. So I'm going to call this DC2 ESG1. So new host. I'm going to say DC2 ESG1. And the IP address here will be 10.0.0.32. I'm going to go ahead and add that host. Click on OK. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. I'm going to go ahead over here, right click on here, and I'm going to go ahead and add it in. I'm going to say DC2-ESG1. I'm going to and put over here it's going to be DC2-ESG1. I'm going to go ahead and save it and then open. We're going to get a prompt for that here real quickly. Pretty sure I enabled SSH on it. I should be able to ping dc2-esg1.lab.local. Yeah, it's responding. Okay, there it goes. It just took a couple seconds for it to get there. Accept, type in admin and the password. All right, so now that I'm in, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, that's the NSX controller. Whoops. I might have made a mistake there. Let me go back over here. Did I accidentally? Oh, I gave him the same IP address. I need to give this guy 30. What did IP address? Oh, that's right. I need to point it to its IP address. So actually, this is incorrect. Me done. I was kind of an idiot with this one. Let me go ahead and delete that. I need to go and point to 10.10.1.1 or 2. So let's go ahead and redo that one more time. New host. Type in DC2-ESG1. The IP address will be 10.10.1.2. Add host. Okay, there we go. Try that one more time. We're going to go ahead and hit the up arrow. Oh, okay, so I need to, let's do an ipconfig /flush DNS. There we go. Now it's the right IP. Let me go back over here to this guy. Let me close him out. And then we're going to go right click over here and DC2 ESG1 load, open. Yes, that's fine. We're going to log in as admin. Give that a second. There it goes. That's better. All right, there we go. So we do a show IP route, and we have our local subnet, which is right here. We can tell by connected. If I should be able to ping 10.10.0.2, and I can. That means I should be able to do things like IPsec VPN and things like that. So that's what we're going to test out in the next video, as I'm actually going to walk through how all that stuff works. We'll set up an IPsec site-to-site VPN and go from there. And that'll be one of the last things that we're going to test out. We'll also do a layer 2 VPN, but as of right now, that's basically where we're at in terms of the operations. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me, and I'll catch all of you in the next video.